Welcome back to the Buckland Museum, Frankenstein radio controls, broadcasting out of an open casket washed ashore in the banks of the Cuyahoga River near Cleveland, Ohio. Today, we're going to chat with writer Mortellus about her book, Do I Have to Wear Black? Deals with the business of death in the pagan community. So rituals, customs, and funeral etiquette. Etiquette? Yes. But first, some business. Friday, March 19th, we will be at the Tea and Tarot event at the Foundry Concert Club in Lakewood. Should be fun. I'll be triple masked up. Come hang out. Don't bother really talking to me. I'm going to be like, hey, stay away. So that's coming up. Let's see, March 7th, we'll be at WitchCon discussing the history of the collection. It's an online event. So don't really have to worry about masks there. And at the end of the month, Apparitions closes. Spectres, Conjures, and the Paranormal on loan from the incredible Stephen Romano Gallery in New York City. We have pieces on display currently from the 1600s to 2020. So it's a really beautiful spectrum of what's just across the veil. So the next show up is Transmutation, also curated by Stephen Romano Gallery. This is going to be really beautiful. Not sure on a hard start date, but it's early March. We have photo works by Courtney Brooke, Alexis Carl, Destiny Turner, Nalyig, Lorena Torres Martel, and with words by Kristen J. Soleil. So I've been looking at the photos that Stephen's been posting for it come up, and it's really gorgeous work. So please come hang out with us and see that show when it is up in our rotating exhibit space. So other than that, this is our website, bucklandmuseum.org. Come see me. Museum's always busy at a limited capacity. Get your tickets online. Mask up. Come see us. All right. So welcome to the virtual Buckland Museum, Mortellus. Oh, I muted. Unmuted there. Hey, Mortellus, how are you?
Nice to see you guys. I'm excited to be here.
So I just realized something. Mort, death, tell us. So tell us about death. Well, you can do that later, but welcome. Really excited to have you here. I've been loving your book.
Thank you.
Do I have to wear black? Because just where we are, you know, people contact me all the time. Hey, I'm in a situation and I need help. We really don't know where to start. And there's a few people I have in my Rolodex, which is great. And but it's nice to have something like this that I can refer to people. So tell me about your obsession with death.
Oh gosh, I don't know if it's an obsession. I feel like I am living in the realm of bad expectations today. You have that beautiful photo that my spouse took as the intro screen, and you got me in pajamas. All the fun backdrop on my name, but really that MOR is for Morrigan. And I don't know if I'm so much obsessed with death as I am, being good neighbors with it.
All right, I like that. So we have a comment here by Jan Fuller, and they say, ooh, I'm excited for this one. Oh, thank you, Jan. And then we have Gina says, me too. So thank you very much, Gina, for your support. And they say, good evening, Stephen. Good evening. As well as good evening, Mortellus. So
hi, Gina.
And then we have Kelvin, a local to the area. He says, good evening. So good evening, Kelvin. Good to see you again.
I happen to know also here in my hometown, there are some children watching tonight's program. So I would like to say hello to AJ and Connor and River, who I know are watching, staying up past their bedtime tonight. So,
oh, that's exciting. Hi, AJ, Connor, River.
River, yeah.
Hello. Greetings from the virtual Buckland Museum. So you're a witch, and you do this sort of thing. Where'd this all begin? Was it, Did you find a body by the river, like in that one movie?
That'd be a fun backstory, I guess. I get the long and short of it. I had an NDE as a kid. Not a fun story, but it is in that book if you want to read it. And made some promises to the gods, and here I am. I've been working with death in some capacity for most of my life, volunteering, being there for families, doing clergy work, funeral services, and that sort of thing. And when I reached a point where I decided I wanted to take that further and go to mortuary school, I was pretty shocked and caught off guard by the bias that is inherent in the industry, just sort of the way that the pagan people are spoken about or dismissed in general, and just the Christianization of our services. And we look at that as traditional and normal and irreligious, when really these things are very founded in Christianity. And in sort of fighting through that process and even struggling to communicate with people I was in one room with, I realized this was a huge issue. So I wanted to write something that would give people a way to communicate with each other, give funeral professionals an idea of what the pagan community needs, give pagans the language they need to communicate with the funeral industry, and give guests who may have never seen a certain type of service an idea of what to expect. I figured if we could just break down all these barriers, that there'd be less fear and anxiety, and it would give people the space to really address their needs.
See, I read a good chunk of this book, but a good chunk of it it's kind of like a cookbook. Well, I guess I shouldn't really say that. It's kind of a workbook about this is your situation. This is how we would address it. But I've noticed that there was one. All right, so I noticed at first I made a joke to myself like, oh, why isn't there a Discordian funeral? Oh, there is. I was like, nice. And then I was like, there's no Pastafarian, though. So
that's true. That was a struggle writing the book, deciding what to include and what not to include. And one of the things I really looked at was just sort of paganism broadly and what we might consider pagan practices, what were cultural practices, what were most commonly practiced in the United States, and what might cross over. The reason that you see no Pastafarianism is that I feel that a Pastafarian could read this book, look at the Discordian chapters, and have the framework that they need to build something for themselves. And I felt that other areas begged for more interest. For example, British traditional Wicca and eclectic Wicca would have very different services. So they begged more attention, for example.
Yeah. Well, it's just a silly joke. So
nothing silly there. Pastafarians have funerals too. Everybody dies.
I would hope that they would. So I want to ask you really quick about my preferred way that I would like to go out. And I don't think it's legal. I don't think it ever will be legal. But I'm a sky burial guy. I need my eyes plucked out by condors. There
are a few places where you could make that work. If you wanted
in the United States?
If you wanted to remain within the construct of the United States, you could donate your body to the Body Farm in Cullowhee, North Carolina. They have a vulture program. You could request that your body be placed in that area so that vultures in particular would have access to your remains.
All right, I got to write that down.
I picked the book under alternative burials. So.
All right, excellent. This book right here. And guess what? I have some copies of this book here. I have a bunch of signed copies. So I tell you what, I'm just deciding to do this right now. If you would like a signed copy of this here, I'm willing to give you one. Just leave a comment, I guess, in our thing, and I'll pick a random one at some point, and I'll send you a copy of it, signed by Mortellus. And I have to say that, Mortellus, your signature is so cool. You really spend a lot of time practicing that, don't you? It's really gorgeous.
Maybe once or twice.
It's got a beautiful script to it. So actually, so how about you don't have to leave a comment, just ask a question, and at the very end, I'll pick a good question, and I'll send you a copy of this book. U.S. only, contiguous 48 states. So.
I have to say, I see a comment there from Lonnie Scott, Lonnie of Weird Web Radio. Thank you so much for popping in to say hi. I love Lonnie's show. If you've never tuned in, it's definitely worth a listen. And Lonnie very helpfully assisted in setting up my lights. He and the lovely Amy Blackthorn were doing tech support for me earlier.
Excellent. So last week you were on with our friends down in Columbus, Witch Lab, and Amy Blackthorn was on the conversation with you there. And I said, oh, geez, I want to put your book next to hers, but her books were sold out. Well, I just got to restock, so I'm very excited about that. So Julie S. Ong says, as a mortician, have you had any supernatural experiences?
Well, that is a tricky question, I guess. I haven't been in that world very long. I graduated during the pandemic and was thrust immediately into COVID volunteering instead of going off and starting my career. But that does not mean I have not been doing the work out there. But supernatural experiences, you might be surprised to discover that cemeteries, funeral homes, they're not really the most haunted places. People don't necessarily die there. Their family's not there. They don't per se have a reason to hang around. But I mean, I have definitely had supernatural experiences in the course of my work, but maybe not like spooky haunting experiences like you might think. More spiritual experiences that were, you know, a person's spirit being present for their funeral or making themselves known to me in the embalming lab or that sort of thing.
So can you give us an example of that happening, if you can? Or, I mean, I imagine some of this can be a bit dicey where you don't want to reveal too much, right?
Right. You definitely can't say too much. You have to protect identities and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I have kind of a, I guess it's morbid question. What was the first dead body you ever saw? Was it in the line of your work, or?
The first dead body I ever saw was mine.
Was yours during your near-death experience? Yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about that if you'd like?
Oh, that's not necessarily a fun story. I was 5 years old and had just experienced a sexual assault. There's not a gentle way to say that, I guess.
No.
And being part of a fundamentalist Christian group at the time, that wasn't exactly something that anyone listened to or cared about. No gentle way to say any of this. It's all horrible.
Yeah.
So I found myself feeling very alone, and I attempted suicide.
Oh, wow.
5-year-olds doing that stuff. That's tragic, but
yeah.
I had this idea in my mind that I had been told that, you know, if you commit suicide, you go to hell, and that if you go to hell, you can't ever see your family again, and you're isolated from everyone that you know. And this was supposed to be a bad thing, but to me it sounded great. And I thought, sure, I'll give that a try, and no one can find me anymore. So I made the attempt, and I do remember as I was dying seeing my body as I left it. See, that's all terrible, right? That was a terrible story.
No, I mean, it's poignant. It's true. The only dead body that I've ever seen outside of an open casket was I was in New York City. I was on my way to work. I was at a subway stop, and someone threw themselves in front of a train, and it all wound up right in front of me. And I looked down, little bit of myself. Got a little brokenhearted there.
I almost feel like those are easier though, because they barely look human anymore.
There was a part that was still there, but yeah. So how did you discover Wicca?
That is a related story, incidentally. Yeah. During that near-death.
Sounds like coming from a fundamentalist family. Maybe they weren't so supportive of this idea.
I am estranged from my family completely. Basically an orphan in that regard. Luckily, my spouse has amazing family that has adopted me, so I'm grateful to them. But yeah, I during that near-death experience, spent some time in the underworld. Time doesn't really mean much when you're dead. I met a deity there, and they instructed me as to what my life would be and told me that I couldn't be dead, that I had more work to do, and they sent me back to my terrible fucking family. So I got to be my life for a while. But yeah, growing up, we didn't have books, we didn't have TV, we didn't have radio, we had no media access. So for my little brain to have to grasp on to this figure that I met once and had no name for, and try and build this mental sort of, I had to build a gnosis around them. And I now know that that deity was the Morrigan. I did not know that then. I just knew that when I saw crows that they were her, and that she was strong, and that she was there for me, and that she expected things of me.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could call that little version of me a witch, if you want. As to finding my way to Wicca proper, air quotes, I practiced solitary for a long time. After I ran away at 17, I spent many, many years just practicing on my own. And it's funny, Raymond Buckland was a huge part of me coming to Wicca.
Really?
I had reached a point where my life was
hearing a good Ray story.
We were at this sort of crossroads in my life, and I had just met the person that I am now married to, and it was just this really beautiful part of my life where things were changing. And it was Yule, and I did a ritual asking for something. I felt like I was ready to learn more, to find family in the craft, to stop building walls around myself and reach out to people. And yeah, you ever have a moment where you just really get a clear message from deity or spirits or whatever you want to call it? You just hear that so clearly. Well, I had one of those experiences, and it meant nothing to me. It meant nothing. The phrase that I heard in my ritual was Long Island, and I was mad about it. I thought, I remember joking at the time, what is this? Is it direction or a cocktail instruction? Like,
right.
So over the next couple days, I found myself Googling witches Long Island, and I found Ray Buckland, which led me to Gardnerians, and here I am.
Wow, that's interesting. I could see that. Wow. Well, that's really neat. So you Googled Long Island rape or Long Island witches, and there it was. How cool! I talk about Long Island pretty much all day long here, and I've been there a few times, and it's really strange because when you visit Long Island, it doesn't seem as this like mythical land of the witches, right? But it's also kind of amazing the way that Wicca began in a furnished basement in the suburbs of New York City, like that, and some ways. So speaking of Wicca, speaking of things like that, magical lands, what are your thoughts about something like, say, the Summerlands?
That's a trickier question for me. You've read a chunk of my book. You said, did you get through the underworld chapter?
I did.
So you know that my feelings are complicated when it comes to
But
I definitely don't believe that the soul is a singular entity. I look at the soul much as chemists do. I believe that the soul can be divided into 9 parts, each of which go off and do different things when we die. I feel like the Summerland is more of a way station, somewhere that you can rest and heal before moving on to whatever your next goal is, reincarnation, or helping people as guides, or functioning as the mighty dead. But I also think that there is any number of afterlife experiences dependent on your personal beliefs, depending on your culture. And I think that any one of those 9 parts of you may go to any one of those places or none at all and may remain earthbound. It just really depends on who you are and what your experience is.
So Kelvin says, believe it or not, I stopped going to church because my late father passed away. I was inquisitive about everything since I was 9 years of age. Hugs from me.
Hugs back. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelvin. Gina says, absolutely agree. So, yeah, I think my ideas of an afterlife come from a late issue of Swamp Thing comics where
Love Swamp Thing. Great comic.
It was all in the Veach issues where the Swamp Thing was traveling to other planets. And I have a very fond memory of getting very sick when I was 16 years old. It was Christmas Eve. I read about 30 issues of the Swamp Thing. The next day I had a fever. I think I was peaking out at like 104 degrees. My mother came in, touched my head, and she was like, oh my God. And I said, hey, don't worry about it. I'm just going to grow a new body. This is fine. This one, it's completely destroyed. And that's when she was really concerned about my fever. But there was this great issue, and it was all kind of exploring about ideas of the afterlife. I've never quite read anything where anybody quite nails it quite like it was in that comic. So
we seem to sort of look at death like the body losing something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it that way at all. I think about it like the soul shedding something.
Yeah.
I look at our body like I look at a t-shirt, you know?
Yeah.
You'll put on a new one.
Yeah. So you had mentioned to me that there's something different about your anatomy, like unusual. You ever open up a body and find something where you're like, this is completely in the wrong place?
I love, by the way, what a vague lead in that was. Like, everyone listening is like, what the hell is wrong with my
I don't want to talk about what I'm not, so I'm just going to spout the stuff and you can just steer it in the right direction. How's that?
I have a tail. I'm just kidding. I have 3 kidneys, which our friend here discovered recently. Apparently that's rather anomalous. Only about 100 people are recorded to have that anomaly. So yay me. I'm just waiting for the right person to come along for me to donate it to. If I'm a match for someone, that would be great. That'd be amazing. But sometimes you find crazy stuff. It's more often than not, you're looking at a body going, I don't know how you were still alive. Like, how did you trip and fall to death because you had like 12 kinds of cancer and you didn't even know it? Like, it's more likely to be something like that. Sometimes it's never happened to me, but there are instances of people having their organs reversed. So people have found that during autopsy processes.
Oh wow.
There have been a couple people discovered to have 3-chambered hearts, like a snake. It's not anything I've seen in person, but I'm aware of it happening. I think the craziest thing I ever saw was somebody who was, we were autopsying and preparing, and the person died of sepsis at a ripe old age. Like the kind of old age where your family's like, oh, they lived a good life. Like, nobody's sad about it even,
Yeah.
They're like 1,000 years old. But this person had the biggest gallstone I've ever seen blocking their bile duct. And I don't know how they lived. This thing was like a golf ball.
Oh, wow.
They also had lungs that were so shriveled from smoking that, like, if you squished them, they sounded like wrapping paper, like squeezing a ball of wrapping paper. So, how did you go on living and die of an infected boo-boo? I don't know.
Some people just have that will to keep going, right?
Mhm.
You know, it's just, I don't know. I wonder if I'll go quickly or not. I think about COVID a lot. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is be alone on a ventilator. I'm very claustrophobic. And that's like, that doesn't sound, I'd rather, why am I talking about this? Okay, so Joe says situs inversus.
Versus, it's the technical term for reversed organs, lungs in the chest. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Jillian, this is my partner in crime right here. She says the body is just a vessel.
I agree. I like to joke that we are a ghost haunting a bowl of jello with about the electrical power it doesn't take to run a light bulb, wearing like a skeleton mech and meat armor. That's all we are.
Our bodies are a haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
So Kelvin says Swamp Thing. Love that comic. I love you, Kelvin. You got good taste. You got good taste.
Very
so, how long did it take you to write this book? Is it like a work in progress that you took many years, or is it something that you cranked out in a year?
I was going to answer Kelvin here by picking up a comic I've been reading, which is the Haunted Tales issue of Batwoman, but it's not letting it guide me anymore. It's great, though, if you haven't read it. As for the book, though I was mad about a lot of stuff, I didn't really set out to write a book.
Okay.
I had 6 months to write it, and write it in 6 months I did.
Yeah.
It was a ton of work, but it meant a lot to me, so I got it done.
Yeah. So, Tony, my partner in the museum, she was like, do you know about Mortellus? And I was like, no.
That sounds really dubious. That sounds really dubious.
Not really. We were just talking. We talk all the time. And she was like, hey, do you know about Mortellus? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh, she's great. You have to find out about her. So I did. And she was like, we should reach out to her about a piece. And the piece that we reached out to you about, a donation here to the collection, is this beauty right here. Now, what can you share about this? Is there anything that you can share about it? Is it a mystery? Is it something that we have to keep kind of shrouded in the secrets? Or is it something that everyone that comes in, it's going to become a centerpiece of my song and dance that I give everyone when they walk in?
Well,
what's it going to be? You tell me.
First and foremost, you should know that I'm going to miss having this piece in my home very much.
It's very cool.
I love this knife. It was gifted to me by one of my Coven students at a point. They knew that I had wanted an obsidian blade to use as a peshet knife, which is a ritual knife used in embalming in ancient Egypt. The first cut in the body would have been made along Pauperk's ligament with an obsidian blade. And so she gifted me this item, and I had the pleasure of using it quite a few times, taking it with me. I've carried this item ever since it was gifted to me in my embalming kit, and have used this knife in dissection and in embalming and in preparation. So it's certainly very, very special to me. It is a consecrated white-handled knife as well.
So tell me about the stand that it's on here.
This stand is also horn, the same material that the handle is made from.
Wow. So very gorgeous. So when I tell people about it, what do you want me to tell them?
I would hope that you would tell them that knife spent time in prep rooms opening up actual human bodies, and that it was used in a very practical way, not just a magical way like white-handled knives often are to cut cords and cut herbs. But I used that to open someone's chest and usher them into their afterlife.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's going to be on display here very soon here at the Buckland Museum. Unfortunately, not sure if anybody's heard about this. There's a big winter storm that happened. I think it probably just only happened in this neighborhood in Cleveland. I don't think it's affecting anywhere else in the United States. But it delayed Tony coming up from Columbus and visiting the other day and bringing it up here. So we are anxiously awaiting. I actually would have waited to do this interview until afterwards, but we didn't know. But anyway, it looks so incredible. Tony says it's beautiful, and very honored to have it here with us at the Buckland Museum. So
I'm excited to see it on display. I feel very strangely having one of my belongings on display. It does not feel like a place I should be at all.
Well, that's the thing is, so especially after something happened with COVID where we really started. So Ray quit collecting in the mid-'70s. For people that are just tuning in that have no idea who Raymond Buckland is, the founder of our museum, he quit collecting in the mid-'70s. So we have a lot of catching up to do. And, of course, we're looking in the back, but we're also trying to look at what's going on right now because we're kind of, the collection has had its ups and downs. Right now we're in an up here. And we're trying to collect what's going on in the zeitgeist of witchcraft in the 2020, 2021. And we're excited about your work here. So it was kind of a no-brainer. So,
well, I will tell you a little bit of something personal about that knife.
Well, thank you.
Are you familiar with the concept of a servitor?
Please.
A servitor is sort of a magical entity that you create from a part of yourself. They serve a purpose. They do work for you. Think of it like a Horcrux from Harry Potter. You take a little bit of you and you put it in an object. We were talking about the 9 parts of the soul before. Certainly parts of your soul can become lost to you during your life. You could be haunting somewhere right now and not know it. You could be someone's ghost. You could be your own ghost. I have had become disconnected from a part of myself at a point, so I decided to use that piece of me to create a servitor, which I use that knife as the binding object for. So when people ask you if the human dissection knife is haunted, you can say that Mortellus is haunting it right now.
All right. Deal. I will. That's
I would also warn you to know that that obsidian is just as sharp as a scalpel, so don't cut yourself.
Yeah, no. I don't play with the toys that we have in here. That's gotten other people in trouble, and I have zero interest in doing that, that sort of behavior. So we're gonna make sure it goes to where it goes. We're gonna keep it there until, one day we're gonna move the museum someplace grander. But in the meantime, it's gonna enjoy its time right there. And there we go. So this is a comment that's probably by Tony. Hi, Tony. Saying, wow. I gotta say, wow. I think that's a Christopher Walken level. Wow. Because that's a heck of a story you just told us, Mortellus.
I see the fine comment from Holly here. This is my spouse's mother. I think Holly has to be proud of me.
Well, that's getting me all choked up.
Hey, after the family I came from, I'm grateful to have this lovely family.
Isn't it nice? I really enjoy Jillian's family that I get to hang out with as well. I hope that this pandemic ends soon so I can hang out with them soon. Because it's awkward, being like, I don't want to be around you. Let's see. I've seen something like that on Dead Files. Awesome. I'm not sure what Dead Files is, but I will definitely have to check it out. So, Holly, shouts out with the requisite "Aw." Oh, that's sweet.
There we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what's next? You working on a follow up?
Oh, I am.
Is there a follow up to Death?
I would like to let you all know that I'm fully crazy.
We're all mad here.
I don't know. When you're trapped home during a pandemic, you get crazy ideas, right? So I looked at my writing contract, and it's like, well, the next so ever many ideas that you have, you know, let Llewellyn know about it. And I thought to myself, that's an obligation. I have to fulfill this. So I wrote up several proposals, sent them all in. Like, well, now they've got some ideas of mine, and I can forget about that part of my contract. And they liked them all, so here we are. So I know there are quite a few more books in my future.
Awesome. Any sneak peek that you can give us, or we just...
I'm happy to tell you that the book that I have coming out next is going to be a practical guide to necromancy, and it will be necromancy as a practice.
Okay.
So it'll be just a fully cohesive look at how that can be a part of your magical life.
All right, wonderful. I have a human skull in the back there. Its name is Agent Scully. She's adorable, and I always wonder, like, she want a part of this, or she just wants to stay in her case. So I just keep her in the case. Let's see. So Rachel Wood has a very practical question. Do you think it's possible to reclaim pieces of your soul lost?
Absolutely. I don't always think it's a good idea. It's often not a good idea. If you lose parts of yourself during your lifetime, there's likely a good reason for it. Trauma is a common one. So when you're reintegrating with those pieces of yourself, you're having to pull back into yourself something that has lived in that moment, and that moment is their identity. So it can be very psychologically difficult or damaging even, but it is possible.
All right. And then Gina says, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Rachel says, I look forward to it. So, yeah, very cool. So, have you, all right, so you talk about clergy, pagan clergy, that sort of thing. I imagine that there's many situations where you have people that pass on that are full on, never turning back, 100%, I'm a pagan, and their family are like, yeah, that's great, but that's not our thing. How do you deal with that? How do you, and is it, I mean, yeah, how do you deal with that sort of thing?
It's difficult. I think that one of the most important things I could say to anyone listening is if you are pagan and your family is not supportive, fill out your papers, write a will, write an advance directive, decide who you want to be in charge of your funeral care. Choose someone that you love and trust who respects your beliefs and your wishes. Next of kin is a legal designation that you should determine who that person is. It goes sort of in order: your spouse, your children by majority vote, your parents if living, your grandparents if living, your parents' siblings if living, and so on and so on and so on. Like, there's math for that all the way out to your fourth and fifth cousins. So figure out who that person is to you and take a real hard look. If I died today, would that person give me the funeral that I want? If the answer is no, or you hesitate, or you're not certain, choose someone else. Do it now. You can print out an advance directive form easily on your computer, fill it out. It's simple, it's free, it's something that you can sign and give copies to your doctor, your hospital, your friends and family. It's not a big deal, so there's no reason not to do it.
Yeah, Absolutely. It's yeah, very helpful for other people, involved, I'm sure, because so Jillian, I hope you were listening when she was talking about the place in North Carolina where I can finally get my eyeballs pecked out by condors.
Cullowhee, North Carolina. You'll want to call Western Carolina University. And if you send me an email after the show, I will put you in contact with some people that I know there.
Thank you very much. Because I don't know, just I'm very claustrophobic, and just being stuck in an urn somewhere, I think that's just not my thing. Being, stuck in a coffin, oh my gosh, could you imagine? And then you're just like, what if my soul, what if my 9 pieces, what if 4 of them get stuck in there and the rest of them 5 have figured out a way off? I don't want that. I want to
I think you really might like anthropological research facilities or body farms, because the bodies that are taken in as donations are always out exposed. You can make sure to tell them as part of your donor wishes that you prefer to be outdoors and not enclosed.
Yeah.
And what they do is allow the bodies to decay in different settings at different times of the year, and they observe them over a period of time. And the data that they collect is used for crime solving. It helps them determine time of death in any given sort of circumstance. So it's really helpful. And then after your body has decayed to bones, those bones are cleaned, articulated, and put into their osteological programs for students to learn from on into history. So it's great. It's a great program.
And I'm a social person, so I'm going to want to be around a bit after that. Yeah. So Tony says, "Hi, Mortellus. It's Tony. Strange question. I think people probably say that to you all the time. I have a strange question." And you're like, because people come in here and they're like, "Tell me if you think this is weird," and I'm like, "Not really." So anyway.
This is not a strange question.
In some practices, I've seen a bowl of salt on the body. Have you seen this before? And if so, what's the reason?
Yes. You see this a lot in Appalachian folk practices, particularly as derived from like the Irish diaspora. You see it a bit in hoodoo practices. This sort of folk practice, you often see the bowl of salt sat upon the chest by the matron of the family. The oldest female member of the family usually will do it. The bowl of salt keeps the soul from wandering too far from the body. The general idea is that if the spirit wanders, it might be enticed to stay by seeing grieving people. So it sort of pins them to their body.
So, are there any active sin eaters in America at this point?
Yes.
Really? So, have you ever encountered one?
Yes. But I'll leave that a mystery.
Yeah, please.
I see Todd's question.
Yeah, so Todd says, when my wife and I got our wills, it was an easy matter to specify that I wanted a Wiccan funeral. Now that part of it is official.
I have some news for Todd that you might find troubling. So this is important. Your will won't be read until many days after your death. Weeks, even months, maybe.
Now, this is important information.
What's in your will doesn't really pertain to your burial process at all. What matters is that you have an advance directive or that you've communicated it to your legal next of kin. And if your legal next of kin is your wife, if you feel that they could possibly die at the same time or before you, you would want to specify in your advance directive someone else. It's often a common misconception that specifying in your will ensure those things for you, but because they often aren't even read until well after the funeral, it goes overlooked.
So you hear that, Todd? Get on that part there. That's very good information to have because, I mean, let's face it, death is such a, we are so far removed from it where we're just like, ooh, you stay over there. Though a lot of us don't go into the details so much. Todd says,
I see Todd. Just remember that your executor or executrix of your will, they're not even called to account until after the death certificate is filed. And you may not even get copies of your death certificate for a month, 6 months, depending, and even longer in a pandemic like now. Some people have waited as much as a year, and you can't settle any financial matters until you have your death certificate. That's why it's so crucial that you have things like an advance directive. And additionally, I'll give you some death pro tips if you want. If you want legal tips for death, if you have huge stuff like land, money, houses that you want to leave to your children and that sort of thing, give them to them before you die. Inheritance tax can be as much as 50%. Oftentimes, children wind up selling homes that they inherit just to pay for the tax on them or to cover funerals. If you feel that you're getting older or your health is poor, make someone a joint account with you. Add whoever you think will be in control of your funeral to your joint account. That way they can immediately access your fund, funeral, pay off stuff on your estate, that sort of thing. But if you don't do that, they have to wait on that death certificate, and it could be forever. You could be bankrupting your loved ones.
So, I mean, that's a good point, because the pyramid that I'm going to make them build for me is going to be very extravagant. So, like, so what's the most extravagant funeral that you've been around? Any fun stories about that?
I've participated in some Kemetic funerals and Kemets.
Oh, yeah. You have a whole chapter about the Kemetic funeral scene.
It's very important to Kemets that the body be very well preserved, because so long as the body lasts, the immortal body can live in the afterlife. So it's very important that they be well embalmed, they have a nice casket, they be interred in a vault, that they be buried and not cremated. They're very specific about that. And often they can be very elaborate with beautiful caskets, or having pets mummified and interred with them.
What about Ushaptis?
I'm sorry?
Ushaptis? The figurines that come back to life one day each for the year?
I think that really depends on the individual's practices and what they would be using.
Because I want to kick back. I don't want to have to shovel the snow when I'm dead. I need little magical creatures to do it for me. So,
for sure.
So Todd says, whoa, thank you. Taya says, Mortellus, this is very informative. Great information. I'd say, yeah, thank you. Because, that's the thing about our culture in general is we're just like, we'll worry about that when we're dead. Well, we're dead, so we don't really, it's not our problem anymore.
I'll tell Todd, I'll charge him my consultation fee. You get to take a box of donuts to your local hospice or your local overworked morgue during the pandemic. Give those guys some loves too. It's the nurses that get all the free coffee. Your death workers in your hometown, they're really struggling out there. So
yeah. So when a body dies, can you get COVID from it?
Absolutely. 100%. For many days after. We've seen it, live virus on a body as much as 18 days after embalming.
Really?
A lot of people will say to me, well, why do you have to worry about it? Because they're dead, right? Why do you need masks, or why does it matter? I don't think people understand the fact that a virus lives on a surface. It can keep existing there. And it is a respiratory virus, so it's in their lungs. We have to lift those bodies, manipulate them. We're pushing air out of their lungs constantly, but we also have to aspirate their torso. So we're putting a trocar into the body cavity and pushing material out into the air. It has hit me in the face. I have firsthand breathed in dead people farts. and like
Yeah.
their breath in my face. Like, you can absolutely catch diseases from the dead, 100%. So definitely think about your local funeral home or your hospice or your morgue when you're thinking about donating masks or taking a pizza somewhere. You know, don't forget those guys. We are B class for everything. So we really don't get a lot of supplies. Toward the beginning of the pandemic, when I was volunteering the most, I saw people in the back of morgue trucks moving bodies wearing trash bags for gowns with like cloth bandanas tied over their face because we had nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's gotten better, but still, it's... Yeah. So, Edwin says, thank you, Mortellus. And I have to say the same thing. Thank you, Mortellus. Todd says, I can do that. Donuts for the folks. Thank you, Todd. I will be sending some myself. And Gina says, that's awful. And yeah, that really is awful. Now, what about... So, if you saw a picture of me a year ago, I had a very strict haircut. I looked very uptight. And then I was like, I'm never going to cut my hair again because, you know, sorry, Tony. Tony, you could cut my hair, but nobody else. I don't know. But anyway, how much longer can I expect it to grow if I die tomorrow?
Your hair doesn't grow anymore after you die.
Well, I know it's really your head shrinking, right? And it just kind of pops out.
As the body dehydrates, the nails begin to look longer because they're exposed under the bed, or the scalp shrinks and the hair appears longer. You could gain as much as half an inch of hair.
All right, cool. Groovy.
I'll tell you an amusing
thank you.
fact about hair if you like.
Oh, yeah. I'm here for it.
We have a bit of a behind the scenes gag. So embalmers, morticians, you have to be an all-purpose person. You have to do makeup and hair and dress the body and all kinds of things. And oftentimes you have to trim hair as well, just to make it look fresh or tidy. I've plucked nose hairs and plucked eyebrows and trimmed
have to do that to me. Yeah.
Shaved beards and all that stuff. But we joke about the funeral mullet because if someone has shaggy hair, we're really only going to cut what you can see. But if you were to sit them up, they would have a mullet.
Wow.
A lot of people out there getting buried with mullets.
Yeah. Business in the front, party in the back, right? Mm-hmm. All right.
Imagine that during the zombie apocalypse. Mullets, the backless clothes. That's not really a real thing either, the backless clothes. Anywhere I've ever been, we've tried to dress people properly without cutting their clothes. Unless you're desperate, we don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, I would.
But something that we do that would ruin your zombie apocalypse, bodies are locked into their caskets.
Really? Mm-hmm. I've already confessed to being very claustrophobic. So how do you think this makes me feel? Well, it doesn't matter because condors are going to be plucking my eyeballs out. So
we lock them because sometimes in like weather-related disasters, hurricanes, floods, that sort of thing, sometimes they'll float. Locked so they can't come open and the remains be lost. And often caskets, you've seen the rails along the edge.
Yeah.
In most coffins, those are hollow. We take the end off and we roll up a paper with their vital statistics and slip it inside and seal that. So their information is with the casket as well.
Why? It doesn't matter. It's just...
Because, like I said, in natural disasters, sometimes cemeteries are flooded. Caskets will float. If they become disconnected from their tombstone, we know who it is immediately.
Okay. Well, I guess there's a valid reason for that. So, Mortellus, you promised me an hour. We have an hour here. So thank you so much. It's been a real joy to speak with you. I'm taking a look here, seeing who's commented the most. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like somebody named Rachel Wood probably has Sorry, it's an unscientific survey. Rachel Wood, email me at bucklandmuseum@gmail.com, and I will send you a copy of Mortellus' new book here. If you feel like this doesn't really have any value to you for whatever reason, I mean, because I've been thinking about donating this book someplace, perhaps a funeral parlor. Is this a good place for it to go? I mean, where are people going to need this book the most besides the actively practicing pagans that have an interest in this sort of thing?
Donate a copy to your local library. That's huge.
Yeah.
Look for the mortuary sciences schools in your state. Donate a copy to their funeral library. That's massive.
Okay.
Get a copy to your hospital clergy, to your hospice library,
Okay.
to your military clergy, to your prison clergy. These are all great places for these to go. Anyone that has to serve broad communities can really benefit from that book.
Yeah. That's, yeah. So what she said.
Jana has a good question that I'd like to answer before we go.
Oh, Jana. Hey, how are you? I totally wanted to do my parents' hair when they pass. Do you think most funeral homes will allow that?
I really want everyone listening to know. Don't forget that your funeral home is a business. If you do not like the service that you're getting with your funeral home, you can take your business elsewhere. It doesn't matter if they have your loved one's remains, get them transferred to another funeral home. And it's really important to communicate with funeral homes before your loved ones die so that you know their way of operating and they know what your expectations are. So you can choose one that's really appropriate for you. But it is absolutely okay and legal for you to be in the prep room, to participate by dressing and washing your loved one, cutting their hair, doing their makeup. You can do all of those things yourself. Talk about this a lot in the book, what language you can use to communicate with your funeral home, but I absolutely encourage you to have that experience.
So that's wonderful to hear. And I'm going to say, Tony, if you're still listening, you have experience in this, don't you? Probably don't want to talk about that. So Jana says, wow, thanks. And Rachel says, thank you so much. No problem. Thanks for chiming in. Taya says, great for the MPN network. I don't know what that is, but that sounds awesome. Jean says, smart. And let's see, guess my pixie will stay with me till I die. LOL. Oh, pixie haircut. Okay.
Yes. Sometimes pink, sometimes purple. I'm envious.
So,
and go ahead.
No. I was gonna go on a completely different rant. So Tony says, yes, I have. Tony has cut the hair of the recently deceased a few times. I don't know why the idea of pixie reminded me of the fact that, have you heard this thing in the news lately that Giselle, the supermodel wife of Tom Brady, is a witch, and she gives him all these protection spells before the football games? And a good part of magic really is defense, right? You know, I mean, there's all books, psychic self-defense, that sort of thing. And you don't know anything about the Cleveland Browns. I don't know anything about the Cleveland Browns, but I have heard people mention to me that they need better defense. And I think, Cleveland Browns, if you're listening to this right here, contact me. We will talk about magical defense. We will turn the Browns into a winning team. I'm not a sports fan at all. I get so bored. I watch it and I just don't understand. But I feel that anything that's good for Cleveland is good for me here, you know, being a tourist industry kind of attraction. So please, Cleveland Browns players, if you're listening, give me a call. All right, so back to Rachel. She says LOL. Gina says ROFL. What are these secret codes? Jean Linder, kisses. And T. Edwards says military pagan. And
it did distract me with the acronym, but yes.
So right here, this is something that's very special to us. Last year, we got a donation from Selena Fox, and it is a medal for the Pinnacle Quest, which was the idea that even military pagans are allowed to have the symbols of their face on their graves. And I think that is, I didn't really understand how important that was until recently, and now I understand just how absolutely important that work that they did was. And have you had any kind of involvement with that sort of thing? The idea of symbols of pagan belief in regards to the military.
I mean, I certainly wasn't involved with the movement that Circle Sanctuary put forth, though I was incredibly supportive from a distance and aware.
Yeah. But you haven't had to get involved in any kind of situations like that?
I haven't, but I do know that one of my contributors to the book, who co-wrote the chapter on heathenry, Leah Svensson, is also an author. She is a generational heathen, comes from a family of heathens. And I do know that she was involved in getting the Thor's hammer marker put up for one of her own relatives at a point. So I know that's a story that's out there.
Wow, wonderful. All right, well, we're 4 minutes past our time here, so
I do wish that I could stay on into the night with all of you, but I have two very adorable little twins in the background that I promised my time to. So
they sound like a couple little cuties. So once again, thank you so much for the donation of this beautiful piece here. I cannot wait to share this with our guests. And, you know, we spent all this time talking about pagans' lives, but now it's time to really, it's enough of a movement out there. You know, now it's time for us to get our acts together and really start talking about our deaths. So thanks for being a voice in all of this. Yeah.
I'm glad to be part of the conversation. I've always said that if this book helped just one person, it was worth it to write. If it inspires someone out there to say, you know what, I can write a better book, and they do that, it was worth it. That's
right.
Being part of the conversation is worthwhile.
Yeah. So Jean says, thank you both. No, thank you, Jean. I did nothing but do a little song and dance. It's Mortellus. It's the talent in the group here. Gavin says, bye. Bye, Gavin. Tony says, thank you, Mortellus. Rachel says, thank you, Buckland. Oh, thank you, Rachel. And don't forget to email me with your contact. Todd says, thank you. Todd, thank you. Rachel says, heart Mortellus. And so am I the first one to come up with the idea, Mort, death, tell us?
Well, there was a running joke for a while, Mortellus, about it, that I think Tiffany was responsible for. So,
shout out to Tiffany, our friends down in Columbus, Witch Lab. I'm reading it, love, wonderful. Thank you both. Road trip in the future. Yeah, Holly, come see us here at the Buckland Museum. Buy your tickets online before you do, though.
That sounds like a good excuse to come up to the museum and teach a workshop or sign some books and bring Mom here along.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I mean, let's discuss. Everybody, let's get through this thing so we can start having fun things again. You know, it's, I mean, I'm enjoying the day-to-day, but I miss the excitement and the action of having events here, you know, because
it's weird. My spouse and I, we were talking about how weird it is that we were watching television yesterday, and there's a scene where two people encounter on the street and they hug, and it made us both anxious. Oh, why are they doing that? What a weird place we've gotten to where that's sort of reality now. But.
And it's weird because, like, think about it. Like, in a few years, we're going to watch media where people are wearing masks. And we're going to be like, oh, remember that? Yeah, that was a weird year. Mm-hmm. You know? Oh, I will road trip for you any day. Okay. Excellent. So mote it be. All right. Mortellus, hold on just a moment. I'm going to say goodbye to our guests, but I want to talk to you for just a second before the two of us sign off. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here. Very excited about this book here. Do I have to wear black? Congratulations, Rachel Wood. Make sure that you email me, bucklandmuseum@gmail.com, and I'll send you your signed copy lickety split. All right, so everybody else, I think I have a workshop planned with, I guess, what we'd refer to as a BNP, Big Name Pagan, sometime in March, but still have to work things out. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to contact me. Other than that, it's been a real pleasure to hang out with everyone. And one thing I want to say to everyone here hanging out with us, until next time, stay witchy, my friends.